on another Friday night filled with football. Welcome inside the studio here on the Critical Eye on the CW and streaming live simulcasting with the Gem City Sports Podcast Network, the gang, all back here for week number 3. Isaac Petcash, Jonathan Williams, Paul Adamsack, and Nick Artman. The three of us on the right-hand side of your TV screen are trying to deal with the wetness of the rain and getting dressed and whatnot. Nick was the guy who stayed inside and didn't sweat it out.
Yeah,
I'm not sorry.
Get
Thanks for letting me use your hairdryer.
You're welcome. You know, it's just
It was our first bad weather week of the entire season, but did not stop the great action from happening tonight. There were a lot of rivalry games on the field. We'll show you highlights from those. A couple of games that went right down to the wire, and some region games that have major impacts on how the end of the season could play out for both region and classification of district as well. So much to get to tonight. Thanks again for being with us. If you're watching on our podcast network, we are streaming live on erienewsnow.com, our Facebook pages, X pages, as well as YouTube and Twitch, and of course live here on the CW for our simulcast. So much to get to. Let's get things started because we got a packed show tonight. And with that, we go to West Erie County. 2 rivalries tonight in West and East. Fairview, Girard, the 95th edition of the West County rivalry. Fairview's won 11 straight games. Here are the highlights from tonight. Scoring started with Vinny Campoli to Robbie Benford. 26-yard score, that connection, making it really difficult on Girard tonight. Extra point, no good. Ryan St. Julian back to pass on the next drive, but Tyler Benford comes up with the INT. And off that turnover, Benford again, 18 yards, finds Pater, getting it done on both ends of the spectrum. 2-point conversion makes it 14-0 Fairview, and they're running Girard out of their own building. This doesn't help. A muffed snap on the punt, gives Fairview the ball at the 5, and they cash in. Joseph O'Reilly, oh goodness, another touchdown, 21-0. Tigers dominating here, but Girard with a spark before the half. St. Julian hitting Tyler Mays in stride. He's gone for 6. That's a 30-yarder, 21-7 at the half. And Grayson Mason and Brady want the Girard comeback. They're sticking it out because of the weather. But Fairview was sticking it out, too, with their special teams. Daniel Lindenberger's field goal makes it 24-7, but then Carson Stevens airing it out for Aiden Arnold for the score. The 2-quarterback tandem working there for Girard. They're within 10 points. Fairview the answer of the next drive. Vinny Campoli. He had 2 touchdowns tonight. Another one here. Tigers now 12 straight wins in this rivalry. They win at 31-20 is your final score. Fairview over Girard. We'll get to some analysis on the game in a second, but before then, we go to East County. Another matchup, the 84th between Northeast and Harbor Creek. These two teams battling the rain. How about Harbor Creek's offense? They struggled last week against GM, not tonight. Opening drive of the game, Heath Betza, airborne. Cam Herman, that's 6. 38 yards, 7-zip. Huskies, they're off to a great start. And then they get this. Northeast forced to punt. They kick it to Cam Herman, and that was not a right idea for the Great Pickers. I know you got to punt the ball, but Herman using his cleats to dig into the turf, and despite the slippery slope, he's going all the way downhill to Pater, 55 yards for the punt return touchdown. It's 14-0 Harbor Creek, and the defense getting involved. Bryson Galloway, the strip sack by Ethan McAdoo. Thomas Gunter kicks into the end zone. Harbor Creek with their 3rd largest margin of victory over Northeast in program history per Harbor Creek football stats and info, 49-10. Those are your 2 rivalry games, so let's break it down. We'll start with Fairview and Girard. 12 straight wins, Paul, for this Tiger team.
Yep.
You're a West County guy. You were at the game tonight. Your general observations of this game and what you saw.
Well, I think you hit on it just a moment ago. 2-quarterback system for the Girard Yellow Jackets tonight. Carson Stevens playing in his first action of the season. He was named the starter coming out of training camp. Had an injury that limited him in the season coming into tonight. So Girard feeling things out a little bit in the first half. 1 drive, 1 quarterback. 1 drive, the next quarterback. The rain didn't help. A little bit sloppy Joe from both sides. Couple of turnovers early. Girard got in a hole. Got back into it in a little bit in the second half, but 3-score deficit twice in this game. Too little, too late. I do think the Yellow Jackets figured some stuff out a little bit. You saw the nice touchdown pass to Aiden Arnold in the second half of that game. Girard did a nice job of not giving up and coming back a little bit. Rivalry game, like you said. Few things to tighten up. Coach Brooks, I think, and that squad will get it turned around. But Fairview, what a team.
And we talk about the Tigers. You can't not mention Vinny Campoli. And
Correct.
He did 2 touchdowns tonight. But the Benfords, Tyler and Robbie Benford with the touchdown reception, the touchdown run. It seems to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, Paul, in the panel, but we've seen now Fairview for 3 weeks really they should be 3-0. Let's be honest. If not for a fumble
Correct.
near the goal line against Grove City, Fairview probably wins that football game. It seems like they have more options now, more so than maybe they've had the last 2 or 3 years. And Mark Sobolewski said that on our show after week 1. This seems to be a team that can not just throw the ball to whoever, but also run with 2-3 different backs. We saw that tonight.
I agree with you, and I think a lot of that is to Sobolewski in the evolution of that offense. The last couple of years, he's been in control there now 4 or 5 years. I don't think I've seen the same offense 2 years in a row, Nick. He's really spread things out. I think he's doing a lot better job at not just giving the ball to one person, spreading it out. I mean, having that much talent helps. But Sobolewski and the Tigers, they're spreading the ball around, and it's been effective for them.
Yeah, and I think it's like what you said too. You have Fairview who consistency, right? I mean, you talked about it, Isaac. 12 straight wins for Fairview in this rivalry. But then on the other side of the ball, you have a lot of new, right? Head coach Mark Brooks this is his first season. They're still trying to figure it out at quarterback. And I look at it this way, like 31-20, that's a relatively close game for two teams that are on complete opposite ends of the spectrum.
That's fair.
A seasoned Fairview team and, a Girard team maybe still trying to figure themselves out. Throw in the rain and you're in for some Friday Night Football.
Now, my question for you, though, is who do they wind up going with at quarterback if you're Girard? Like, how do you make that decision between the two quarterbacks that you've been playing? How long do you continue to play out 2 quarterback system? How long do you rock like that until you kind of got to pick one guy and roll with him for the rest of the year?
I think the answer to that is what kind of team do you want to become down the stretch of the season? Do you want to become more of a passing-based offense? I think Stevens is probably the better passer. Do you like the run game, the option game that St. Julian gives you that option to do? It's an interesting juxtaposition for Coach Brooks and that staff. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how we go forward because I think St. Julian has played his way into the lineup a little bit more. I think he's earned the right to be on the field. And the problem is that the quarterback position, there's only one of those guys on the field at a time.
Region dub for Fairview, they're 1-0 where that comparison is concerned, now 2-1 of the season. And for Girard, as we've talked about on this panel, they're a scrappy team. Mark Brooks is going to keep his team in games.
Correct.
We've seen that for 2 of the 3 weeks now. But again, Fairview's offense, and we're going to see this, I'm sure, moving forward with what's going to be a heck of a Region 5 battle, and we're going to get to some of those other matchups coming up in a little bit here. They've got the team of the depth, I think, to be able to contend for this region down the stretch. Let's go to East Erie County, guys, and I was at the Northeast Harbor Creek game, but I want to get your thoughts on this. Nick and I were having the conversation before the show off air. Does this Harbor Creek win show how good of a team GM is, or just the fact that Harbor Creek truly was able to get back on track? And I think you look at this game for the Huskies. Rainy game, 2 defensive-laden squads. They like to run the football. I was impressed with John Angerer coming out right out of the gate, guys, and just attacking on offense. He goes over the top to Cam Herman for the touchdown, the aggressive punt return, then the defense making plays as well. Statement win tonight for Harbor Creek. I know that Northeast isn't as good as they were the last couple of years, but Harbor Creek came out early in this game and they made a statement.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think Harbor Creek has the potential to be a really good football team. It also does show, though, how good GM is and how good they are going to be going into the season. The way that they performed against Harbor Creek. So I don't think it's one way or the other. I don't think it's either answer. I think it's a little bit of both. GM is that good, but Harbor Creek is also a good football team as well, and they're showing it that they are much improved.
I agree, and I like that they did it to the pass game tonight. They weren't just a Tyshawn Jones-laden team. They showed that they have more than one option on offense, and that's going to be dangerous moving forward.
Well, and not even just the offense, because first touchdown of the game for Harbor Creek was an offensive touchdown. Second touchdown of the game was special teams touchdown. Third touchdown of the game was a fumble recovery for a touchdown. I mean, when you're motoring on all
Firing on all cylinders.
That's the way to look at it. It's late on a Friday night. These guys spent time in the rain. I didn't. But that's a tough team to beat, right? And Harbor Creek had to come back and fight this game. To answer kind of what we were saying off air, GM is that good. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm on the bandwagon this year for GM all the way. And that doesn't mean that Harbor Creek was a bad team. Right. And this, I think, shows that. They're ready. They're scrappy and ready to fight back.
And again, the thing that impressed me tonight, the offense. We knew the defense was able to get it done week 1, especially against Oil City. GM's a different animal. But to be able to come out of the gate right off the bat and score those quick touchdowns, I think for John Anger, again, look, he's 2-1. And again, it's a big win for region implications and things of that nature. But I think for Harbor Creek, you keep building confidence with the first-year head coach. who knows? And you're going to play a couple of games that are going to be like this Northeast game later down the road, which could be these scrappy games that are low scoring. So maybe Harbor Creek is built to win both ways, both in terms of low scoring defensive battles, but also the offense as well with Heath Betza, who I think is one of the more underrated quarterbacks in District 10. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back here on the Gem City Sports Podcast Network, we're talking with Cambridge Springs head coach Nate Liberty, who's going to join us via phone. Can't wait for that conversation, plus more highlights and reaction to some big games around the region as we roll along. Coming up next. Welcome back here to the Gem City Sports Podcast in conjunction with the Critical Eye tonight. Isaac Metcalf, Jonathan Williams, Nick Artman, Paul Adamsack. I don't know what he's listening to. Some
Still
highlights.
catching highlights, yeah.
Are you got a score update from the Eagles and Packers?
Yeah.
Is that what that is?
There was an advertisement on Max Preps. I apologize.
I hate those videos, man. The ads are the worst thing. All right, back to business. We're going to get some more highlights and more scores in a minute because we have so much to talk about on this Friday night. But before we get to that, we're very pleased to be joined via phone tonight in Crawford County by Cambridge Springs head coach Nate Liberty, who just told me a minute ago he's chomping at the bit to get on the football field. Don't know why he's upset he didn't play tonight. The rain was horrible, but he gets a game tomorrow against Greenville as the 2-0 Cambridge Springs Blue Devils. Coach, how you doing? A night off on a Friday. That's a rarity.
I'm doing good. I'm glad I did hear it pouring rain on my roof, but it ruins my weekend.
Does that, in all seriousness, as a head coach, because we see now Thursday games, we see Saturday games all the time, does it change at all just in terms of the logistical preparation for a team being so used to playing on Friday nights?
I think it does. Like, I'm just sitting here nervous on, like, what knucklehead didn't go home and he's out on Friday night and something stupid happening. Like, a couple years ago, we played our playoff games on Saturday, and there was a car accident on Friday. And one of our seniors, he didn't get to finish in that playoff run, and it just breaks my heart. And I don't know, it just makes me nervous.
Coach, let's talk the season a little bit. We got a graphic on the screen here depicting your 2-0 start. You've got 2 shutout wins, and you've outscored your opponents a combined 99-0. Coming off your district championship from last season, and we know the roller coaster of which that went, the loss to Lakeview in the regular season, beating them in the D10 championship game. Just assess the team for us this year and what you've seen from your guys and what is, as you've told us before, it's another veteran team with a lot of weapons.
Yeah, I mean, I was super excited. I was hearing everyone, the talk, blah, blah, blah. And our skill's young. I mean, our entire skill, except our quarterback, is coming back next year. Our line is our vet. They're our seniors. But just to have those young kids, because, I mean, we lost some great skill, just to come back and play how they are, eating how they are, like, I'm super pumped. I'm super happy how they're playing.
You talked about your line, and I know that's the basis of what your team is and the talent, like you talked about, that you have. But I want to ask you about your quarterback. It's very rare that you have a guy who can be a 2-3 year veteran starter that's been a part of the offense. What does Morgan Appleby bring to this team that maybe things you don't have to coach? Is there an intangible that he has that just helps you guys week in, week out?
Morgan Appleby is a special player, and what I'm fortunate and blessed to have is, this week, we put in a new play. And like he'll actually say, "Hey, coach, why don't we try it this way for the handoff? Try this way with a fake," and have a high school kid talk to you like that. And I have the confidence in the world for him to say, "Yeah, let's try it." And it's not wasting practice time. It's me and him working together to make the play the best we can. Like that's the special bond. Like when I say he's our general and he's our leader, I know there's coaches out there that don't have that on their team. And it's just so special. I mean, this week, like just looking at things and I put something in him to say, "Hey, let's try this." It is just huge. I love it. I know at the end of the season I'm going to be heartbroken, but I'm just super excited to go through this journey with him on his senior year.
Coach Nick Artman here. Sorry, Paul, jumping in real quick. You know, thinking about you got a big game tomorrow night against Greenville, and I don't want to give away the game plan here tonight. But how are you preparing these guys coming in? Like Isaac said, 67-0 game 1, 32-0 game 2. How are you preparing for game 3 against a usually tough Greenville team?
Well, you know, I was really nervous going into Northwestern because our starters only played one quarter. And then we did 8-minute quarters and 7-minute quarters and 7-minute quarters. And I'm like freaking because we're not in game shape. And in the Northwestern game, when we came out in the second half and we started to dominate and starting to play Cambridge football, I thought, you know what, these kids are ready to fight. And when you play a Mercer County team, you have to be tough and you better be ready for a dogfight. And I think that's the mentality and the culture Cambridge Springs football has. So I'm excited to battle with anyone.
Yeah, I love that. Dogfighting. I mean, just to prep your team like that, like to have that mindset, that's a great mindset to have all year.
Coach, I want to ask you about Greenville. What do they do well that you spent most of your week in practice preparing for?
Greenville is big and physical like they've always been. There's teams that have run that wing T for years and years and years, and they know how to run it. They know how to find your weak links. You know, that's something special that that team has, and we just got to bend but don't break.
Coach, I want to end with this because you and I have had a lot of candid conversations just about the state of high school football. We see a lot of times rotating coaches and guys who don't spend a lot of time at their school, whether that be for personal reasons, for just moving on, things like that. You've really seemed to develop a foundation at Cambridge Springs. What about this program since you got there in the middle of the pandemic has you coming back and wanting more, and what's been that connection like for you in your time with the Blue Devils?
I just think it's just how this community comes together for their kids. I mean, that you should see up our football field on people that have come. I mean, we had a guy come and volunteer and paint our bathroom. Like, you know what I mean? They're donating their time, their money, and it's just, I mean, like tomorrow morning, the First Baptist Church down at Cambridge is cooking breakfast for us. I mean, I remember that stuff back in the WIPU, and the fact that small town Cambridge Springs and Crawford County is doing it. It's awesome. It makes me feel great to be their head coach, and it makes me want to do everything I can to win.
Nate, what's the plan for? Take me through your game day plan, because you're not your prep for game day, but like, what's a typical day in the life of a head coach in Crawford County?
Oh man, I'm an ES teacher, so when I get to practice, it's when I want to vent out.
I apologize. I don't know this. Is it hunting season at all right now?
Believe it or not, when I get practice, I have fun because I got to get my mind right and I've done really well. I got 2 girls, and I only do 2-hour practices. And believe it or not, it's actually keeping our kids' legs fresh. And I get in and I get out.
Listen, that's a good way to live by, man. Once you have kids, as we know, it changes the whole ball game. Hey, Nate, appreciate the time, man. Best of luck tomorrow and throughout the rest of the season. I'm sure we'll be talking to you more. And enjoy your Friday. And again, congrats for staying out of the rain tonight.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
All right, Nate Liberty, Cambridge Springs head coach. They play Greenville tomorrow. Try to go to 3-0. More Critical Eye when we come back. Highlights and reaction to some of the other games around the region. More highlights. Let's go to Dollinger Field, Cathedral Prep's home opener. And these highlights, courtesy of the man to my right, Jonathan Williams. He's an excellent filmer as well as an analyst. Can do it all. So can Charbella, too, back from suspension last week. Goes with a 3-run touchdown, 6-0 after a block PAT. Second quarter, Beavers inside the 30. High snap, but it's Kendall McCaleb up the gap and into the end zone. 7-6 Riverside in the second. Still in the second quarter, you're going to hear this name a lot the rest of the season. Prep has found one of their superstars on offense in Corey Allen. Here he goes, breaking free with reservations for 6. It's an 83-yard touchdown, 13-7 Prep in front in the second quarter. Check this out, though. Final play of the first half. Bo Bradenhuff, the quarterback for Riverside, finding Ethan Baker on his backside, it seems, but the lateral is counted to Colin Boris for the hook and ladder touchdown. Riverside up 14-13 at the half, but Cam Christman's field goal late in the third quarter puts Prep into the winner's circle again, 16-14. They beat Riverside, and the Ramblers are now 3-0 on the season, with Mike Cray's squad continuing to just win games. That's what they do at Cathedral Prep. Jonathan, you were at the game. You were talking to me a little bit about this Rambler team and just what they were able to do with explosive plays. We saw that with Corey Allen, Davin Friedman, of course, leading the charge in the quarterback position. Some people tout Prep. Some people said it was a rebuilding year. They just keep winning their 3-0.
You know, that's the number one thing that's jumped out to me about Prep this season. I've seen them play twice now this year, in person, live, and up close. And the one thing that jumps out at me about them is they just find a way to win. They don't have to play a perfect game. They don't have to play extremely great football. They don't play bad football. But at the end of the game, when they're in the game and it's a close score and there's a shot for them to win the game, they are finding ways to win football games. And you can't ask for very much more from your football team.
One thing that I think is scary for Prep is that they don't need a ton of depth to be able to make explosive plays. Charbella Toof out last week. Cathedral Prep actually lost a couple of their quarterbacks last week as well. They still put up a big second half and a win over Sharon. You take a look this week. Latoof comes back, gets the first touchdown run, but then they run Corey Allen on a jet sweep for an 83-yard touchdown. I think maybe we didn't give Prep at the beginning of the season enough credit with their talent on offense and what they have. We knew they were going to be hard-nosed at the line of scrimmage. We knew their defense, specifically on the back end, we saw it against Erie with the 4 picks, was going to be good. Mm-hmm. But they've got some playmakers, Jensen. It's starting to materialize.
Well, I think what we had to wait for those playmakers to materialize. We talked about it here. We've talked about it before. You had a lot of seniors that were graduating, and there was a lot of turnover on that Cathedral Prep team. So we just had to wait and see who was there. And then when you had LaBouffe be suspended after game 2, you were like, okay, who's going to step up? Now you're starting to see who's stepping up. The offense is starting to click together. I mean, I love to see that defense, just putting up stop after stop after stop. Held Erie to 6, held Sharon to 7, and now a relatively low-scoring game here. The team's warming up when it needs to warm up. We talk about momentum a lot in our show.
Yeah.
The momentum is starting to build for Prep.
Keep this in mind, too, Paul. I don't want to interrupt you. A big stat for Cathedral Prep. They were down at the half to Sharon, didn't allow a point in the second half. They did not allow an offensive touchdown to Erie in the second half. They did not allow a touchdown to Riverside in the second half. 3 straight games for Prep, no offensive touchdowns allowed in the second half, and that's about adjustments.
good halftime adjustments, and I think you hit the nail on the head. This was a team that came into the year without a lot of star power.
Yeah.
The star power needed to set themselves up. We needed to wait and see who those stars became. It's always an extremely well-coached team. They play extremely hard. I'm not surprised that they're 3-0. We didn't know the star power coming in, but it's starting to come together. And I think this Cathedral Prep team that's maybe a little bit undersized as opposed to what we're used to, they're still going to be very, very good. They're a tough out every week.
And as far as that star power, you have to find creative ways to get the ball into your playmakers' hands. Going under center and running a jet sweep to Allen is a perfect way to get the ball in his hands in a rainy game, in an environment where you're not trying to throw the ball that much. Okay, let's hand it to him. Get him moving laterally, get him an advantage running full speed and get ahead of steam. And you see what happens. Big plays.
Yeah.
That's right.
Prep winners. Go ahead, Nick.
No, I was just gonna say, and it started with Latouf. You get excited for him, and now you have him and Allen, kind of this 1-2 punch. Like that's scary.
Prep winners tonight. McDowell falling to Mentor. Those are the big scores out of the bigger classifications of high school. We got to take a break. When we come back, though, we're going to quickly break down Fort LaBeouf Corey, a game that went down to the wire in what was a huge region win for one of those two teams. That's next. Back here at the Gem City Sports Podcast, here in conjunction with the Critical Eye here on this Friday night on the CW and streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Want to remind you also, when we're done here on the CW, stay tuned to our social media pages. We have about 15, 20 more minutes of reaction and analysis from high school football week number 3. Before we end the night, guys, I want to touch on Fort LaBeouf and Corey. The Bison going on the road, stopping Corey at the 1-yard line as time was nearly expiring. 19-13 winners over the Beavers. How about the Bison after a week 1 loss? They've rattled off 2 huge wins.
Huge wins. Last week against Farrell, this week on the road against a very, very tough Beavers team. They take the lead 19-13. Beavers get the ball back with under 2 minutes to play. Get the ball down to the 1-yard line with a minute to play, and that Fort LaBeouf defense comes up big time. We said last week a couple game of the year, maybe this one's sort of in the conversation for minute of the year, but it's always an exciting time in high school football. And Fort LaBeouf, another team in that Region 5, we talked about Fairview just a few minutes ago. When those two teams meet up, oh boy.
Well, and again, keep this in mind too. Fort LaBeouf, Fairview, Corey, maybe those are the 3 teams that we think are going to be in the running. Fort LaBeouf's already got one of those 2 wins out of the way, and they're going to have to all play each other. So the Bison now 1 leg up on Fairview and Corey because they've had to play in that one of 3 Bermuda Triangle games, and they've won.
You know, and I said this last week talking about Fort LaBeouf, how you were going to find out what your team was made of playing in those close games and those down to the wire games. Now you got 2 back-to-back under your belt. You're really finding out what your team is made of, and you're really finding out that your team is comfortable in those moments and capable of performing well in those moments. And it's going to bode well for you towards the end of the season when you get deep into region play and when you get towards playoff time.
I'll leave the last word to you, Nick, with a minute to go here in our studio portion of the show. Your thoughts on this game?
Now, this game was like 2 trains heading as fast as they could into each other, right? You have LaBeouf coming off of the win against Farrell. You have Corey riding high, back-to-back wins. You know, unfortunately, somebody's got to lose, and LaBeouf's looking really good.
Unbelievable week of football tonight. Despite the rain and the elements and Nick getting a chance to drink hot cocoa in the
I wouldn't know
studio,
anything about that.
We're still not going to let him live that down. What a week, and what a wins for a few of these teams, especially in Region 5, where the picture is starting to take shape after week 3. Again, we are still continuing to be live on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitch after this show until about 10:45. For those of you on the CW, tune into our social media, then tune into Football Fridays at 11:15. So much more highlights and reaction to get to as well. Take care, everybody. back online in just a few minutes. We'll see you on Monday for the Critical Eye. Region 5. All right, we're back. For those of you who are watching on social media, thanks again for being with us here as we continue our coverage on the Gem City Sports Podcast. And thanks again for being part of our show. We're again just starting this up the first few weeks, but it's been a grand old time for the four of us here who just love talking Erie sports and love analyzing these games from week number 3. Isaac Petcash, Jonathan Williams, Paul Adamczyk, and Nick Artman joining us here on the desk. Talked a lot that half hour. Of course, whether it be the Region 5 mashup, Preps win tonight to go to 3-0. Let's talk about Region 5, guys, and continue this conversation, because I think the one thing that we have talked about in the first 3 weeks of the season is parity, correct? We see teams that struggle in 1 week and then come out and they play so well the next week. We're now starting to see the teams that are really the cream of the crop here. But I don't know if you were to ask me tonight if I could pick the best team in Region 5. We see Fairview with a win tonight over Girard. Harbor Creek is still continuing to battle. They're now 2-1 on the season. They get a region win over Northeast. You take a look at Corey, even despite the loss to Fort LaBeouf tonight, they're still a team that has a quality win over Titusville, who just blew out Grove City tonight.
Right.
And then you take a look at Fort LaBeouf, and they've got 2 straight wins after a week 1 loss to Meadville where they were competitive. How do we make sense of this region now 3 weeks into the year?
Corey is sort of the fly in the ointment because, like you said, this high school football to me is all about levels. You find a good team and they played this team and they probably should win. It's when you have sort of the 3-legged chair. This guy beat this guy and this guy beat this guy and this guy beat them. And I think Corey is right in that right now. Big win over Titusville. Titusville gets a big win over Grove City. Grove City got a close win, but a win over Fairview.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about Fairview Corey for that Region 5. Who's the second team of those two? And of course, Harbor Creek is in that mix. 2 big wins, 1 loss on the schedule, and that loss came to who? Oh, that's right, for Jonah McLean, and they're blowing everybody out. So that's just kind of one of those. Okay, well, we're going to chalk that one up as we lost to them. Region 5 is super, super interesting. Week to week, it's going to get better and better. I really do want to find out when Corey and Fairview play, because
I'm going to take a look at that now as we go.
There you
I
go.
do want to make a comment. It's really sad that GM still isn't in Region 5 because you imagine if
Oh my gosh.
one of the mix, that would be.
I actually thought until this morning Titusville was in that region too, and I was talking to a Fairview coach, and he was like, "No, they're not in there." I go, "Okay."
I'm still
But
getting used to
again,
the
keep
realignment
in
too.
mind,
Yeah.
and this is another layer of the onion that we have to peel back. Is we're talking about the region championships. Keep in mind for classification, the teams that we mentioned, Titusville is a 3A school.
Right.
Corey goes from 4A to 3A this season. So even though you have some teams in different regions, this is important for playoff consideration as well. I think we can all agree Mercer County powerhouse is Sharon Hickory. They're going to likely be the top 2 seeds unless they fall off. 3 through 8?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Coin flip.
Yeah.
And again, I think that these games so important. And I think when you look at like a team from Fort LaBeouf tonight, reeling off another victory, a win that is huge in region consideration. You look at their non-classification wins and non-region wins when they beat Farrell. I understand the Steelers maybe aren't the team that they were last year. That's a huge win. But as we talked about with the putting the pieces of the puzzle together and then these wins where you have a triangle effect where one team beats one team beats another, it's going to be hard for the committee if this continues to be able to see teams outside of 1 and 2 because everyone has shown they're capable of both blowing teams out and getting quality wins.
And go ahead.
For being the guy that's not from around here, maybe you guys can attest to this a little bit more, but how big would it be to have potentially 2 Erie County teams hosting a playoff game? Is that something that you hear a lot, especially coming out of that region and out of that area of football?
Yeah, and again, you'd have the better field location advantage for round 1 of the playoffs. We saw that last year. There was a big discussion back the last 2 years, and I think this is a good chance for a history lesson. there's plenty of decades of history about Mercer County versus Erie County powerhouses, and there's always an argument as to who should get what seed, who should be number one, number two. Traditionally, it's been Mercer County, but you look at the last 2 seasons, and specifically last year was Northeast with Joe Von Johnson's squad before he resigned as head coach. Ultimately, having an incredible run to the season, there was a big question mark as to whether they should be a top 2 seed. Ultimately, they pick up the 4 seed. They play an Oil City team with Ethan Knox, and they run into a buzzsaw. 2 years ago, General McLean, there was an argument where, okay, 1 loss all season long, they should be the number 1 seed, ended up being the 2 seed, ran into a Hickory squad that was really, really talented in the 7 and ended up losing that game. So, these games early on matter for these Erie County teams who, as Mark Sobolewski said a couple of weeks ago, as other coaches have said to us, Erie County needs to be able to perform well if they want to have a top seed in 3A specifically.
Yeah. When I look at Region 5 too, I think nothing against Harbor Creek, nothing against Fairview, but I think you saw a preview of the Region 5 District 10 Championship tonight. I really like Corey and Fort LaBeouf. I think they play well on both sides of the ball. Harbor Creek obviously bounced back really well, but if they can, we need to see if that game against GM was a fluke or is that an inconsistency? And if that's an inconsistency, you got to get rid of it in Region 5 because the competition is going to be stiff. And both Corey and Fort LaBeouf are putting up points. Their defenses are playing well. Going off of what we talked about earlier, it was a dogfight tonight, and I think they're going to keep fighting to the championship there as well. So
I hope Coach Sobolewski isn't watching right now because Isaac's going to get an angry call for leaving Fairview out of that discussion because I think Fairview can play spoiler to either of those 2 teams.
Yeah.
I mentioned the 3-headed monster a few minutes ago, and you said Fort LaBeouf, and I go, oh my gosh, I forgot about Fort LaBeouf. They might be the best of the 4. So, that region is a mess. And Isaac, to hit on your point about making it tough on the District 10 commissioners picking playoff spots, that's good. That's what we want. If it's tough on the commissioners, that means we have good football as fans, and it's intriguing, and we have stuff to talk about every week.
Talking about the triangle, the trio of teams, right? If we're looking at Corey, Fort LaBeouf, and Fairview, the 2 matchups that are remaining between those teams, Fort LaBeouf, Fairview commences in week number 7. Just so happens to be the same week of McDowell Cathedral Prep. So, salivate your taste buds for October 4th and don't make any plans because that's going to be a whale of a week. And then the week after, you get Corey traveling to Fairview. So back-to-back matchups there where that's concerned. And so that, again, could determine the region and seeding, maybe. And look,
big games.
What teams might get in? I mean, you look at this, 3A is likely going to have 8 teams. That's historically what it has been. If we assume Hickory and Sharon are going to be the top 2 seeds, and again, we don't know. There could be things that turn out, things of that nature. Grove City is going to be a part of that as well in that conversation. And then you look at all the teams that are part of this. Corey, Fort LaBeouf, Fairview, Titusville's part of it. There might be a team that gets left out if you don't necessarily play to your best competition here. So, again, a lot of things to check out when it comes to Region 5 and Class 3A. But again, just an exciting night of football, and for the local Erie County teams, a couple of big wins as well. We talked about the Region 5 slate. We talked a little bit about Cathedral Prep on the show. Want to touch on a couple of other things as well with some scores that we're getting here. Let me go ahead and give the final scores to you, by the way, the rundown, because we were just talking the entire show. Fairview 31, Girard 20, Eisenhower beats Iroquois 7-0, Harbor Creek over Northeast 49-10, Prep beats Riverside 16-14, Seneca over Union City 40-0. Don't look now, Jack Corey's Bobcats team is going to be a sleeper in Class 2A. Fort LaBeouf over Corey 19-13, Maplewood clips Cochranton 27-16. The Tigers now 2-1 as well, so the Crawford County team's performing well early on. Butler beats Meadville today 35-11. That was a game that the Bulldogs will be licking their wounds from, and now they drop 2-1 on the season. Ursuline shuts out Fairview 27-0. McDowell falling to Menor 50-14. Wilmington over Northern Bedford 21-19. The Greyhounds, another team come playoff time that will be tough to deal with. Sharon shuts out Slippery Rock 42-0. Hickory 63 over Conneaut 6. That was a game on Thursday, and GM, of course, 35-14 over Oil City. That was a win on Thursday as well for the Lancers. We want to touch on a game Saturday, and this is in relation to who we just talked to on the show, Nate Liberty, the head coach of Cambridge Springs. In case that you haven't really been following along Class 1A, which is, again, going to be a one that comes down to the wire, Greenville-Cambridge Springs could easily be a preview of the 1A championship game. Can't wait to see that one coming up tomorrow night.
I think you said it. Very likely that's the injuries being the main factor. That's probably your 1A championship game. Where's that game being played? Is that at Greenville or is
Cambridge.
it? Okay, that's at Cambridge. Okay, so Coach Liberty's got to like that. Hopefully it dries out before tomorrow night. The wing tee offense is tough to stop, especially like a team like Greenville who's run it for 3 decades. It's all about following the guards, and then from there they're going to pick out where the defense is slanting to, and there's a lot of false keys. If you know the wing tee offense and your players are good at running it, they've probably been in this system since they were 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
It is very, very tough to stop. Liberty's been good wherever he's gone. He was only at Fairview for a couple of years. He was good there. I think it was a bit of a surprise that he ended up going to Cambridge because they were a down team when he showed up, and they have been a prolific perennial playoff team for the last couple of seasons. He's really building a brand for himself out there in Cambridge Springs. I'm looking forward to that game. I'm glad it's in Cambridge because it's not as far as a drive.
Chance to go to that one too, and that's the great thing about high school football. The last few years, you get games Thursday, you get your perennial Friday games, and then Saturday games as well. We're going to see a lot of that. Before we end tonight's show, gents, I want to go down the line here and talk about one team, the team that most impressed you guys tonight. We talked about a lot of them, and there will be more storylines as a result of this, but we'll start with you, Nick Artman, your most impressive team from tonight. Doesn't have to be based on how much they won by, but just the way that they were able to win, the team that stood out to you the most tonight.
Prep was the first one that comes to mind. And I know it's the first team that comes to most people's mind when you talk about football in Erie County. But it's the stuff we talked about earlier. There were some question marks coming in. I mean, you never count Prep out. You never go into the season saying, oh, this is going to be a down year for Prep. No, you wait and see. They're riding that momentum wave. You're starting to see the stars shine on offense a little bit. I'm getting excited for Prep. I think they're going to be a really competitive team again.
And again, Mike Cray told us before the year in the interviews, look, some years are like this. You have a lot of roster turnover. Who knows what the internal expectations of this team was, but certainly you can't do any better than 3-0. So a good pick for Nick Artman for Cathedral Prep. All right, Paul, your most impressive team of the night.
I'm glad we're doing this segment because I haven't got to talk about the Seneca Bobcats all show long. So 40-0, another win for Jack Corey and that team tonight. The junior quarterback, Harwood, I apologize if I got it wrong. About 150 yards a game. They got a freshman running back, Moats, had a 50-yard touchdown tonight. They're putting points on the board. Corey's another guy, been there for a couple of years, really getting into a groove with that program. Really impressed by Seneca so far. Can't wait to see how far they go.
3-0. Are the Seneca Bobcats on the season, and they have dominated opponents outside of the Northeast game last week. The 35-7 over Sagertown, 40-0 tonight over Union City. Jack Corey said he was pleasantly surprised in training camp with the guys that he had, and you're seeing the fruits of that labor right now. Got a big game coming up next week.
Pleasantly surprised is such a football coach way to put things.
Big game.
How'd you guys look? I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, big game next week against Mercyhurst Prep. Seneca looking for somewhat of a rivalry game there against the Lakers. All right, Jonathan, your most impressive team of the night.
If you thought I was going to get out of the show without saying the word ZZ Top, you absolutely I could not miss an opportunity to say it. I'm looking at GM and the guys. The work that the Twins have been able to do is absolutely ridiculous. Their halftime stats were crazy. I don't know if we have a final score on their game yet, but
From GM last night?
Yeah.
from
That was
GM
last
that was
night.
last night. 35-14. Man, those two are unreal.
Yeah.
And
Another stats in 2.5 quarters again.
Yeah.
man, like
Over 900 yards in 3 games.
we're looking at approaching 1,000 yards passing in 3 games of high school football. It's
Yeah.
absolutely ridiculous.
Yep.
What they've been able to do down there at GM is crazy. And
I think
can't
to your
wait
point,
see it keep going.
that game was yesterday, and it's still impressive tonight.
Man.
I think that's the takeaway from that. Yeah.
I think Jonathan's just assuming that they're continuing to score touchdowns. Maybe it's the T-shirts that we got tonight, courtesy of Mark Iser. Again, I could easily go with Harbor Creek as my most impressive team of the night, and I think that would make a ton of sense. 49 points. And again, courtesy of Harbor Creek football history on X. Follow them. They do a great job of coming up with Harbor Creek stats and data. It's the 3rd largest margin of victory against Northeast in that rivalry matchup, one that has been historically won for the most part by the Great Pickers. They have the lead in that series, although Harbor Creek won tonight. So again, I think you look at That team is impressive. But I'll tell you what, a team to potentially look for as a sleeper in Crawford County, how about the Maplewood Tigers tonight with their victory over Cochranton 27-16? Wins over Union City, wins over Cochranton. 35-12 doesn't seem like a great outcome against Reynolds, but that Raider team is a powerhouse. They gave up an opening kick return touchdown, and their defense, I thought, for the most part, played well in that game against the Raiders. They got a couple of potential games that they could come up with wins against the next 2 weeks. They travel to Lakeview next week. Then they get Kennedy Catholic in week number 5. You could potentially be looking at a 4-1 Maplewood team when they go to play Conneaut on September 27th. Keep an eye on the Tigers. Crawford County a couple of teams in that area performing well, including Cambridge Springs. So keep an eye on them for what could be a potential sleeper team come playoff time for the Maplewood Tigers. Guys,
I don't want to end on a sour note. I know we talked about this, before we went on air tonight, but I want to get Paul's perspective on this too.
Yeah.
Oh, is it time to sound the alarms for McDowell? I know they're not in league play yet. They're giving up a lot of points. I know we're big Blaze Myers fans, but I worry about the mental state of the team with the start of the season the way it is, 1-2.
I will start out by saying this. There are no cupcakes on McDowell's schedule.
Yeah.
They don't play any easy teams. So they're not playing 5A schools, 4A schools. There's no warm-up. They lost a potential freshman All-American at the Division I level along the offensive line, along with others. So protection has been the issue thus far.
Yeah.
They're getting used to a new head coach. I think we talked about it on the show a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
It's going to take a couple of weeks for this McDowell team to find their groove, but I think they will.
Yeah,
I agree.
They're too talented not to.
Yeah, I agree. And again, keep in mind, too, Aaron Slocum, first year as head coach. I know he's been with the program, but sometimes it takes a little bit of time to implement a little bit of your game plan and your flavor on the team. I think that team just has too many weapons to not come out of what you would consider a fun. Banner's a great football team. They're one of two Ohio powerhouses in a row.
Yeah.
And again, like we said, Bo Orlando did the same thing. The non-conference, the non-region games, and the non-Erie County games for McDowell are always difficult. I think they'll be okay. Again, it's just the first 3 weeks of the season. I think there's still a lot of football left to be played. All right, we got to get out of here because we got to get ready for the 11 o'clock show on Erie News Now. But again, want to thank all of you for being a part of our show tonight, however you may be watching, wherever you may be watching from. We love high school football. We love high school athletics and love getting to talk about it. And we'll be back here again next week for more high school football reaction. Our next show, Monday, 9 a.m. live, TalkErie.com. It's the Flagship City Sports Talk podcast. We'll talk week 1 reactions from the NFL, which we didn't get to tonight. We'll talk more high school football and high school sports, maybe a little bit of college in there as well. It's a great time of year. It's like Christmas, but it comes early.
But better.
September.
But every week.
More coming up next week on the Gem City Sportsnet podcast. For now, though, enjoy your weekend. We'll see you all on Monday.